Welcome to These Kids Can't Wait, discovering the world of rare disease. Today, we are so excited to welcome Nikki McIntosh, author of Rare Mamas, host of the Rare Mamas Rising podcast, and a powerful advocate for families navigating the rare disease journey. Nikki is a mom herself, and through her personal story, she's created space for other rare mamas to feel seen, supported, and empowered. Her book and podcast have quickly become go-to resources for parents, caregivers, and even professionals who want to better understand what life looks like in the world of rare disease. Nikki, we're so glad that you've joined us today. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as a rare mama?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here. Yes, my journey started back over a decade ago when my younger son was diagnosed with a rare neuromuscular disease called spinal muscular atrophy. I have two boys, Mason, who's 15, and Miles, who's 13. So it was my 13-year-old that was diagnosed with SMA when he was just 18 months old. And that was our entry into the world of rare disease, or even knowing this world existed when he was diagnosed with a disease we had never heard of.
Yeah. And can you take us back to that moment when you first realized something wasn't quite right and how that realization began shaping your path as a rare mama?
Yeah, so I would say we noticed something was going on before my son's first birthday, maybe around 9 months or so, when he wasn't bearing weight on his feet to kind of take some of those precursors to walking, pulling up to stand and cruising furniture and things of that nature. We had an older son, so we knew what those milestones were and when they should be occurring. And so when we saw they weren't starting, we started asking questions of our pediatrician at the time and expressing some of our concerns. And I'll be quite honest, most of those concerns were completely dismissed. And so we kept asking. And then around the age of 12 months, 13 months, when we still weren't seeing him being able to bear weight to pull the stand, we decided at that point we were going to move on and take him to a neurologist. And we started down the path of testing at that point. So that's kind of where the journey began and how it led us to getting that SMA diagnosis after 6 months of testing.
Okay. And he's 13 now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what does his daily life look like?
So Miles navigates the world from a wheelchair. His disease causes muscle weakness, and due to the muscle weakness, he doesn't have the typical strength in his legs and his trunk. And so he uses a wheelchair for mobility. He attends mainstream school. He like typical kid his age, he's a teenager in all sense of the word. And he's not affected cognitively, so he really enjoys school and learning. And he plays wheelchair tennis, but he still, has many medical appointments and sees a whole full team of specialists. And so he is straddling the world of, being amongst typical developing peers, but also having to do so much to upkeep and maintain his health, PT, OT, medical appointments, like I said.
And that's hard for a teenage boy. That's
Yeah,
so hard.
it's
Um,
true.
is there a treatment for SMA?
Yes, there are actually three FDA approved treatments for SMA, two of which are drug therapies, and one which is a gene therapy approved for patients two and under. My son was involved in a clinical trial for the first ever SMA approved treatment, FDA approved treatment called Spinraza. So he was participated when he was just shy of 3 years old. And in 2016, that drug was approved by the FDA. Pretty historic moment for our family. And now there are a couple other treatments, like I said, on the market and a lot more in the pipeline. So it's a very exciting time for SMA and for our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, does it slow the progression or stop the progression of his condition? Does he have a progressive condition?
Yes, it is a progressive condition. In fact, SMA at the time of diagnosis was I should say, the leading cause of genetic death in infants. So it's a very severe prognosis, a very severe disease. It can affect all muscles, and so it can affect the respiratory system, and that can often be fatal for some patients. And so these disease modifying treatments are basically, the hope I think is to stop the progression of the disease and anything else is like a nice to have on top. Of course, we're all always pushing for more, and we would love to see symptom reversal. We would love to see cure. But it's an evolution. It's been an evolution in the process, basically.
Yeah. And at what point in your journey did you realize that there was a need to be an advocate, not only for your child, but for other rare mamas out there?
I would say pretty early on, we were fortunate enough to have a really robust patient advocacy group called Cure SMA, which provided a lot of, I mean, really all the resources, information. They have a medical advisory board that is basically putting together, care protocols and best care practices for patients. In addition, they're driving research and funding research and raising money for research and so they've been a wealth of information and knowledge. And the members of the community, other parents and other mothers were such a lifeline of support to me when we were new to this. But being immersed in this world of rare disease, I came to understand that only 50% of diseases have a patient advocacy organization. And, some diseases are so rare, there's less than, 100 people, for example, worldwide with a diagnosis. And so in those instances, patients are left on their own to basically advocate to find resources, to find specialists, to find the research that's happening. And so that's what I think propelled me to feel like I wanted to support other mothers and other parents of children with rare diseases because saw these glaring gaps of information and support and resources for moms like me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've gathered so much wisdom from your own rare disease experience. And what stands out is your willingness to share it with other families. And one of the ways you've done this is through your podcast. Can you tell us what inspired you to start the podcast?
Yes, basically conversations like this, just talking to other parents and realizing that we're all we've amassed so much information, each of us. And so it's that really sharing, I think, of learnings and of experiences that can really help us in our daily lives. And so I wanted to just be having these conversations with other parents so they could share what they learn and also they could share their stories. I feel like we need examples of others like us out there living these lives. We look around our communities, we look around our schools, our churches, our hospitals even, and we don't see a lot of rare disease patients. But we're here and we need to share our stories. And in sharing our stories, it gives us strength. And hearing another person's story, we can borrow some of their strength. And so I wanted to have an outlet to share these stories. And the podcast seemed like such a great way to do that because as parents of children with rare diseases, we're spending a lot of time multitasking. We're driving to appointments. We're listening to podcasts while we're doing something else. So it just felt like a great way to meet parents where they were, where they are.
Absolutely. And I wish I had found your podcast 5 years ago when we were
Yeah.
starting to go through this. And did having that podcast inspire you to write about your book, Rare Mamas, or has this been in the works for a while now?
The book has always been the goal. It's always something I wanted to do. I wanted something really comprehensive, a comprehensive guide that could really basically guide somebody through their journey and so that they could pick it up at any point wherever they were. For example, if you need information about education, you could pick it up and read that chapter. If you're trying to get a care team in place, you could pick it up and read that chapter. So I really wanted the book so there would be a comprehensive guide and basically everything I've learned along the way in one easy to take with format. So the book has always been the dream.
Yeah, and I think parents go through different phases too, and you're always revisiting some of those chapters. Whereas, a couple years ago, our daughter was walking and now she's wheelchair bound. I'm going back to those chapters and I'm reading, okay, what are the avenues? What are my resources to get her the correct equipment that she needs?
Yeah.
It is nice just to go back and open it up again, flip through the chapters and be like, oh, there it is. Got it.
Yeah. Yep, because I mean, as parents, we're so time starved. I don't expect anybody to have time to read a 300 plus page book all at one sitting. But if we have it there and we know it's there as a resource and we can just kind of pull the bits we need at that time, that can be really fueling. So I really hope it serves that purpose.
Absolutely. What is one thing that you didn't expect to learn while writing this book?
I didn't expect that I would love the writing process so much myself. I have never wanted to write a book. I never had an idea for a book. This was not something on my bucket list. Um, I have other creative outlets through the years, but writing was never one of them. I had to write for business, but I never had a purpose for writing outside of work. And I think there was a lot of healing in it for me. It was very therapeutic to just spend time alone, kind of banging out some of the things I've been through. And yeah, it was therapeutic. It was healing. It let me have those quiet moments to myself to process, which we don't often get. We rarely ever get, right? And in that processing, there's a lot of perspective that can be shed and that can be gleaned from it. So I didn't expect to love the writing process so much, but it was really a blessing for me to do it.
Yeah. In the book, you touch on healthcare, education, and even financial systems. What are some of the biggest barriers that you've personally encountered in those, and how have you learned to navigate them?
I've encountered every barrier, I feel like. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But going through our journey, I felt like I just kept bumping up against obstacles. Navigating, healthcare, for example, here in the United States, we have a very fragmented healthcare system. And so what you would find is you find a lot of different specialists treating one disease and who is the quarterback of that team and who is leading and who's the liaison. And so what I came to find was that liaison is me as the parent, right? I'm the through line for all of these different specialists and all these different entities that my child is seeing. And so, how do I become that person? How do I become that educated liaison when this is something I've never done before? So that was big learning curve of how to step up and be a really informed member of the team. Um, the same with educational system. As parents, we are also a member of that team, but most of us don't inherently know special education law and acronyms and things of this nature. So we have to often step up and learn them so that we can get the right services in place for our children. And that can often come with, yes, this big learning curve. And sometimes you learn by, having situations that aren't going as you want them to. And so what I wanted for the book was to basically just glean, everything I learned along the way so that perhaps it could prepare the next mother for what's ahead. And so that maybe she wouldn't have to bump into some of the same obstacles I did.
Yeah, and those obstacles almost awaken that inner fighter that you talk about, and that mastering mindset. Can you share an example of how mindset shifts have changed the way you show up for your child and yourself?
Yes, I think that all of us have this very instinctual need that we want to serve our child. It's that love that is within us, and it is there to protect our child, is there to defend our child. And what we're up against is very personal. These are our children. We want the best for them. We want to make sure they have what they need. And so it's emotional. But what I've learned along the way is that we have to make sure that our emotions don't get in the way of us getting what we need for our child. So one of those mindset shifts, I think, was to learn how to approach this journey from a place of real growth, to be open to changing the way that we advocate for our child, that we step up for our child. And often that looks like coming from a place of fact, not emotion, and learning to be a partner, be an advocate, but not be an adversary, be an ally. And so those are some of the shifts that have happened along the way. I found that if I showed up armed with information, then I could speak from a really informed and educated place and not a place of emotion. And then in the end, that ended up serving my child better. I could articulate his needs from a place of fact, and often on the receiving side of that is someone that wants to give my child what they need because it's coming from factual information versus emotion.
Absolutely. It kind of feels like you're taking that control and you're
Mhm.
letting the doctor know this is what we need, this is what I'm looking for, this is the game plan.
Yes, exactly.
And you also in your book talk about letting your village surround and support you by giving them specific ways to help. What are ways that you've asked friends and family to help? This one in particular is very hard for me.
I think it's hard for all of us, and it's hard to ask for help. And I would say that, when we're dealing with children with diagnosis, some of that help, you need certain skills, right? There's a certain skill set that has to happen if they're going to help directly with our child. But I think there are other ways that people can help. And what I've learned is that it really depends on the person and what their skill set is and what they like to help with, what their capabilities are, what their capacity is. So perhaps, they might not be able to help with our child directly, or they might not be able to take our child to a doctor's appointment, for example, but maybe they can help with our other children if we have them, or maybe they can run some errands for us or drop off some school supplies, or maybe they're good at research. Maybe they're not even great at emotional support. Maybe they're great at something else really practical. And so I think it's really about realizing there's many different ways that support, or what support can look and that we all probably have people in our lives that have different strengths and different ways that they can support. And so it's basically aligning those two. Um, and and when that specific person asks for if they can offer to help, and they have specific skills that are helpful, utilize them in that capacity. I've had, friends that were great at fundraising and awareness. And so they've helped raise awareness for SMA, for example, or fundraise for SMA, for example. I have other friends that are great at they love making meals. And so they've shown up for meals after surgeries and things of that nature. So it's really about kind of delegating that help in the ways in which our village is able to help and lining that up.
Absolutely. There is one question that I dread sometimes. It's when people ask, but how are you really doing? And it's so hard
Mhm.
for me to answer this sometimes 10 times a day when they know, your child's going through something. I never know how to respond. Do you tell them, yeah, I just spent a couple hours curled up in the fetal position, crying my eyes out? Or do I respond, we're doing okay. Thanks for asking. What is the best way you have found to respond to some of those questions?
Yeah, that is so hard. And depending on the day we're having, right? And depending on what our bandwidth is. So I think the best way is to kind of know ourselves. Where are we at that day? Do we have the capacity to answer that question in a really deep, honest way? Is that going to serve us at that point? Are we about to head into an appointment where we need to be calm and cool and collected? And answering that question is going to make us fall apart? Then maybe that's not the right time or to answer the question in that way. So what's going to serve us in that moment? Is the person on the receiving end someone that is a soft place to land and can offer the emotional support we're looking for? If they are, perhaps then that is going to benefit us to have that conversation with that person. If they're not, and then we're just going to expend all this energy putting out, a lot of emotion and our true feelings, but we're not going to be met on the receiving end with somebody that can really handle that. Perhaps that's not the best use of our energy at that moment. So I think it's really getting to know ourselves and what's going to serve us and in those different instances, and then answering in that way that's going to serve us in that moment.
That makes sense. And knowing where you're at in the roller coaster.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
It is. And that kind of leads into, my next question. In that same chapter, you talk about unexpected losses. And this really resonated with me because I didn't think anyone else had experienced this. We've had a few friends and loved ones that have taken that step back from our family when they learn about our daughter's diagnosis. Can you explain to our listeners why this is common, for rare disease families and how we can respond?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's very common in all my conversations with other mothers, other parents over the years. I hear this all the time. It's very common, and I don't know that we'll ever fully understand why that reaction is. People all have different reasons. Some people don't have the emotional capacity, they don't have the emotional intelligence to um, know how to support someone going through something so difficult. And so because they don't have that, they may feel insecure in serving in that way, and so they retreat. Some people may not have the bandwidth to just keep checking in. There's a zillion different reasons why this can happen, and I don't know that we'll know really fully understand them all, but I think what is helpful to know is just to prepare for this because we can't control other people's reactions, and we may receive reactions that we weren't expecting. So I think it's helpful to know this going in and to truly understand that sometimes it's not even us. It's just that other person is not possibly able to respond in the way that we want them to. And that sometimes has to do with them, not all the time with us in our situation. It's really hard. It's really, it's salt in the wound, I say, basically, right? Losing relationships that you thought would be there to support you in one of your times of greatest need. But I think what we want relationships that are going to be able to support us, to uphold us, to offer emotional support. And sometimes that's going to come from the relationships we currently have. And sometimes it's not going to come from the relationships we currently have. And so then we can seek out other relationships that actually can offer that and give us that support that we so desperately need.
Yeah, and I love how in your book you say to stop feeling guilty about it. If you have to step away, and you have to choose where to spend your time wisely, sometimes you do have to um, seek out those who, help uplift you, like you said, and encourage us. And that's something I really needed to hear is stop feeling guilty
Yeah.
about some of these relationships lost.
Yes, it's so hard because I think we want to uphold everything we have, right? We are these diseases are already stealing so much, right? And so we want to uphold our relationships. We want to continue being, a good mom, a good friend, a good daughter, a good whatever, in our different circles. But when you are dealing with complete loss of time and it is for your child, a child that cannot do for themselves, of course, it's our time as parents that's going to be impacted. And honestly, when we're trying to save our child's health, there is nothing greater. There is nothing greater. That's everything to us. And when we're just trying to take care of our child and any other children, if we have them, let alone ourselves, it doesn't leave a lot of time for other things. And there's a guilt that comes with that, but it's not like we're handed more hours in the day with that diagnosis. And so we're operating in the face of limited time. And there's only so much we can do. And I think at some point we're going to come to recognize that. That may come after we've just, completely depleted ourselves and burned ourselves out. Um, but I hope that we can see it sooner than that. For me, it took I had to learn it the hard way, but I think that's why I'm so passionate about trying to make other parents aware of this so that perhaps the next family can be smarter than me and realize that, yeah, that guilt, we're gonna have to let that go because there's only so much we can do. There's only so much time, and our children need us, and we need ourselves.
And I wish I could maintain that same level of communication, but you said it perfectly. Relationships pre-diagnosis are much different, after diagnosis. That's just how it is.
It is just how it is. It's unfortunate, and it's one of the ramifications. But it's not like we're going to stop taking care of our children, or we're going to put our own self-care and aside because those things have to be maintained no matter what.
Yeah. We're getting better at that. We're getting better at self-care.
We're trying. It's a work in progress over here.
Yeah, I need to do my stretches too. I gotta get
Yes,
stretches in.
yes. I did do my stretches this morning, I will say, and that was helpful.
There you go. And how can spouses, siblings, extended family, and even friends become better allies in this journey? What does real support actually look like to rare mamas?
I would say that, like we talked about, and when you get asked the question, when others can just ask the question, how can I support you? Here's some things that I could do, and they're giving you options. That's really helpful. Hey, I can run some errands for you. Hey, I can make some calls for you. Oh, you have a rare disease awareness day coming up for your cause. I'd love to get involved with that. How can I get involved? So I think it's just continuing to ask those questions of how they can support us and giving us some really tangible ideas of ways they can support. And that allows us to say, okay, yeah, that one right there, there's a tangible idea. That would be really helpful. That would be great. I think that's the best way.
Yep. Yeah. Get creative. Just
Yeah.
get creative.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this little fact until reading your book. Can you tell us about the zebra and what it symbolizes in rare disease?
Well, it's funny because I actually almost didn't put it in the book because I just made that assumption that perhaps everybody knows this. And I realized, no, that is, I didn't know this before. I didn't know this at the beginning. So that's why I made sure to put it in the book. So I'm glad it's there. But it basically said there's a saying in the world of healthcare. When it says, when you hear, it's for medical providers, when you hear hoofbeats, think of horses, not zebra. And basically, it's emphasizing to look for the more common reasons or diseases or diagnoses versus the ones that are more rare. But what we come to find out now is that rare diseases are more common than we once thought. 1 in 10 Americans has a rare disease, which equates to 30 million US patients. And worldwide, the numbers are somewhere between 300 and 400 million patients worldwide. So these are large populations of people that are affected by a rare disease. And so that's why we want to show that rare is everywhere. And that's why the zebra is the mascot for rare disease.
I love it. I love it. And now I know
Yep.
after your book. You'd think I know by now. And do you see your book as part of a larger movement to give rare mamas more visibility, voice, and power? If so, what momentum do you hope it builds?
Yes, I think we need, like I was saying at the beginning, we need to hear each other's stories and we need to know we're all out here and we're all navigating the same thing. There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of strength in that. When you feel like you're alone and you're the only one experiencing something, it can exasperate the fear and the isolation that we're already feeling. But when we know that there's millions of us out here navigating this road, and we hear a story of a mother starting an organization like you guys, starting an organization for their child's disease, you know, um, starting, the taking the steps to fund research, getting a clinical trial going. When we hear that, we know it's possible. We know that this isn't, we can make change. We can move the needle for our children and for the next generation of children. And so, yes, I hope it is a part of a movement for all of us to rise up and to fight for our children, to fight for rare disease patients everywhere. 30, actually 40 years ago, a group of patients that had and parents that had hope and decided this is not okay came together and formed an organization that was called Families of SMA, now called Cure SMA, that went on to advocate and raise money for treatment. And now my son is the beneficiary of that treatment. It may not have helped their child as soon as they would like, but it's making change for future generations. And so this is how we do it. This is how we do it. So yes, I hope it's part of a larger movement to just motivate, parents to keep pushing for the changes that they want to see.
And it is, it's very motivating to hear those stories, and it motivates other parents to get more involved.
Exactly. And that's what we need. We'd all of us pushing from, with whatever we have from wherever we're at. That's how we get this, this is how we move things forward.
Yeah. And this book is exactly what a lot of rare mamas need at this time. And I'd love to share a copy with everyone that I know that's been newly diagnosed
Yes, please
with
do.
rare disease. How do you envision getting this into the hands of all rare mamas?
Well, that is the task at hand. But I think conversations like this are a great way. Just, I feel like other parents are some of the best sources of information and resources. And so all of us just passing along what we know. So hope word of mouth. And, there is also the whole, the industry of rare disease, right? Pharma and biotech and research. And I'm hoping that just by making them aware of a book like this will help them understand our story, our plight. And I think that can really help inform patient care, drug design, development, clinical trial design, all of those things. So that's the hope that that this can basically, just inform not only other parents but also the industry of rare disease.
Yeah, absolutely. And for parents who may be in the thick of despair, what is one strategy you'd encourage them to try first to feel less isolated and more capable?
It really is this community. I mean, really, this community is everything. I am, 10 years into over 10 years into my journey, but every time I'm around another rare disease parent or a patient, or I'm at a rare disease conference, I leave fueled. It helps fuel my fight. So I would encourage those parents. We all start and think in this place of we deal with a lot of grief. There's that despair at the beginning, and it can creep up all along our journey with missed milestones or anticipatory grief. There's all forms of it, and so in those instances, I think it's really helpful to reach out to another rare disease patient, parent, organization, and talk to someone about it. And you'll often find that person on the other end is a really can be a great source of emotional support and ear to listen, and might even have a few tips of what has helped them. So plug in, plug in, plug in, plug in.
Yeah, and it feels like a lot of times these parents of kids with rare disease feel like they're on an island. So just making those small connections is it's a big relief. You're like, oh, this person knows what I'm going through. And instantly, no matter where you're from, you're best friends. All of a sudden those connections are so strong.
They are. It's an instant bond and it's a deep bond. You don't even have to tell your whole story to get
No.
there, right? You can just say a few words and the other person's like, yep, I get it. And that's everything. That's everything.
Yeah. And if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice as a new mom, what would you say?
I think I would just encourage myself that you're capable and you're going to grow. So where you start is not where you're going to always be. At the beginning, you're going to feel like, there's so much to learn, and how will you ever learn all of this? And it's so, beyond your competency and your skill level. But trust that you will get there because you're fueled by that deep love for your child. And so, because of that, you are just going to keep learning. You're going to keep growing. You will become capable and you will step up and you will rise to the challenge. I wish I could tell myself that at the beginning, like, you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah. And we've gone so far since where we were at the beginning of this journey. I can't believe, where we're at now and that we were capable of this. So
Yeah, I think we never know what we're capable of until we're thrown into it, right? And then we figure it out because we want to help our kid.
survival mode.
Exactly. It's exactly it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And rare mamas do it with such heart, which they do it all with such heart and such love. And I think that's a driving force, and that allows us to do some pretty remarkable things.
Absolutely. And lastly, can you share with our listeners how they can learn more about your podcast and your book?
Yes, you can find everything at raremamas.com. There is links to the book, which is called Rare Mamas: Empowering Strategies for Navigating Your Child's Rare Disease. And the book is available on all the platforms: Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, Bookshop, Books A Million, Target, all the places. And then the podcast is called Rare Mamas Rising. There's a link to it. Also from the website, raremamas.com, but you can find the podcast anywhere you listen: Apple, Audible, Spotify, all the platforms. And so, yeah, and you can find where to reach me, everything at the website, raremamas.com.
Awesome. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story and your perspective. Rare Mamas is such a great resource for moms dealing with these hard diagnoses. And I love this wholesome and empowering community that you've created. I wish I had it 5 years ago. Like I said, that journey is so hard when you have to figure it out alone. And your Rare Mamas guide is what these families and mamas absolutely need.
Thank you so much. It's been such a privilege to meet all these parents and to be a part of this community. It fuels me so deeply, and so I'm just so grateful. And thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And for our listeners, we'll also include links in the show notes below so you can connect directly with Nikki and the Rare Mamas Rising community. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on These Kids Can't Wait. Every story shared brings us one step closer to awareness, advocacy, and action. If you've been inspired, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode.
To learn more about the Lost Enzyme Project or donate to the cause, you can visit our website, Instagram, or Facebook page. Those links will be provided in the show notes below. Thank you again, and remember, these kids can't wait, but together, we can make a difference.